come through aren't going to alter their behavior whenever you...
lied. It's like in a weird way, you pretty much lied to my face. Like.
Yeah, it can, that can be difficult. Yeah, Kramer, I mean, ultimately, when it comes to trying to help a person, I think it's if it's someone that you care about and it's something that you care about that person is doing that you care deeply about, I think it's, you either have an obligation to help them, like you have an obligation to yourself to help them because you've chosen that person to be of value and you've chosen what they're doing to be something that you care about, or you have an obligation to that person because they're someone that you care about. And if they're someone that you care about, like you said, they're doing what they're doing, not listening to you, is going to be stewing in your head until they change. And at the same time, you have to say, if you've approached this person and tried to get them help and tried for them to see the error of their ways, and you've done it 3, 4, 5 times, 2 things. One, if you've done the same thing every time for those 5 times, it would be insane to do it again. Literally. It would literally be insane, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Thank you!
Okay.
Thank you!
Okay. Okay. So that's one piece of the puzzle. Another piece of the puzzle would be then, if you're going to approach someone about something more than once, approach it in a different way. Like if the first time didn't work, think of a different way to approach it, try it again. If that doesn't work, think of a different way to approach it, try it again. If that doesn't work, think of a different approach. And yes, at some point, I do think you have to reach a point where you just say, that's it. But at the same time, I think even whenever you start an interaction with somebody, like say that person is in your family, or say like in my case, I just recently was married, right? If I'm going to get married to somebody, this is a long-term decision, right? I'm going to have...
Unless you Kim Kardashian.
Right. My point of view is marriage is a long-term decision. It's something that when you go into it, you have been on this earth long enough to have met enough people to say, this person that I've recently met is important enough to me that I'm willing to have them be the _1 in my life for the rest of my life. And you say, okay, like if you're going to make that decision, then that's how you build your life from that day forward. That's the way that that's my opinion on that, because if I'm going to be living with this person for the rest of my life, they should be _1 in my life. And if they're not, then that's a problem with me, I think, because I'm just going to set myself up for failure if I'm going to be defending my mom over my wife or defending my dad over my wife. Like, that's a challenge. And I'm telling you this right now, this is something that's been in my life just since getting married. There's been a challenge, because as I was always just my dad and mom's son, like it was easy to know who you have to defend. It's your family. Like, if you can defend all these people all that you want, but ultimately, like, you can't get rid of your family. They're all, like, your mom is your mom, your dad's your dad, your brothers and sisters are your brothers and sisters. Sorry. Like, you may not like them, but you have to accept the fact that they are your family, you are required, in a sense, to build that system of logic in where you say, you know what, like, it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter what the problem is, I'm going to have to at least give my best effort to trying to help that person because they're in my family. Now maybe you can also say at some point, whether they're family or not, you almost have to break ties. Like say there's people on, I'm going back to Dr. Phil, I've apparently been watching that show a lot recently. My wife and I watch it almost every day. There are people who they're in a marriage, and Dr. Phil doesn't want to tell them that, like, you should be, if I was you, I wouldn't be in this relationship, or if I was you, I would. But Dr. Phil will say, like, hey, you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision whether you want to deal with this abuse, or whether and be in a relationship without abuse, or not deal with the abuse and be in a relationship with abuse, or not be in the relationship at all. Like, that's kind of situations that get presented to people on that show, and you sit there and say, well, that's a real thing that you could think about, because if there is someone who, whether they're a member of your family or your closest friends or your relatives or who knows what, and they're repeatedly not trying to help themselves when you try to help them. You may have to reach a point where you just say, like, I'm sorry, like, but I'm not going to invest worry in my mind. I'm not going to invest worry in my efforts to you. And if I ever run into you, I will always want the best for you. But I'm not going to go out of my way to build my life around you. I think that's something that can be said, because certainly, like, the fact that someone is your father, the fact that someone is your mother, the fact that someone is your brother or your sister, doesn't mean that they're necessarily, like, a great person. And the fact that you're you doesn't mean that you're a great person either. Like, that's something that we all have to constantly think about. So, yeah, I mean, I could imagine having a sibling who was, I mean, just a despicable person and did everything that they could to backstab and to push me down while they push themselves up or something. Fortunately, I don't have that person as a sibling, but I could imagine having that person as a sibling and just saying at some point, you know, enough's enough. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to help you, because what you've proven to me is you've gone out of your way to hurt me, or gone out of your way to hurt yourself when I've tried to help you, which indirectly hurts me, because that's ultimately what happens. The people that you care most about, the people that you don't want to be out of your life, are people that you're constantly going to be thinking about. And when they're sort of off track as you see it, it's going to be something that's constantly going to wear on you, and you're going to want to help them out. And when the right words are there, you go do it. But when it comes to, like, going after someone 5 times to try to fix something, what I would challenge anyone here to do would be to try different things each time, different words, different methods, different whatever. And yeah, at some point you just got to say, you know what, my life's too short to worry about yours. I got to worry about my own.
Because that different approach thing, I agree with that totally. Because I feel like I don't do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like what if you don't know how to, like, sometimes I don't even know, like, how to come with a different approach. Like, it depends, like, some people, like to me, like, some people, like, the way they learn is always, like, just straightforward, but then some people it's, like, differently.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I don't know, like, how to come at that person, because you say so many things, and you just, like, because I'm just the way, I usually just, like, think, like, common sense wise, like, if there's some words that, like if you obviously see that and you, like, agree with, like, a certain topic,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you still don't do anything, like, how do you approach that? Because you know they agree with you, but how do you come up with something?
I personally have 2 methods that I try in those situations, because there are times, and I'm thinking, having been at this school, there are situations that have arisen at this school that have been really uncomfortable for me, to where, like, I don't want to have to make a decision, but I have to. You can imagine, right? This is kind of the similar situation from the sounds of it, where, like, you want to do something about this person and help them, but you're not sure how. You like, deep down inside, you almost, like, don't want to do anything, because you're like, I've tried everything that I know.
Yeah, and you don't want to, like, mess it up or make it even worse.
Yeah. So that is a part of being an adult, I can say, because, like, as a kid, you can defer to mom and dad. That's kind of easy in a way. But, like, part of becoming an adult is, like, coming down to a decision in situations where you really don't want to have to make one. Oh my gosh. So let me think. The best way, the 2 ways that I found to approach a situation. Number 1 is think like a Martian. And what I mean by that is, imagine if you were a Martian coming to Earth for the first time, having never met people, or just this is brand new. And I just think how interesting it would be. One example, like, on the line between light and dark as the Earth is spinning, most people close to that line are sitting in front of the mirror doing this, right? About the time the sun goes down is normally about the time people go to bed, and that's about the time that people brush their teeth, right? And the same thing when the sun goes up. And if you were a Martian looking at that, you'd be like, what the crap is going on? These people are worshiping the sun by doing this with their hands? Like, that's real, like, with a brush on their teeth, like, what's going on? Like, it's realistic to assume that if you were a Martian, you would think that we were sun worshippers who brushed their teeth to worship the sun. I mean, it's realistic. I know that it sounds absurd, but it's true if you were a Martian and came.
Gotta go worship the sun.
Right. in some ways challenge you to think, like, and this is, I'm now advocating the Martian point of view, but thinking like, you are nothing without the sun. The sun gives all of the energy to the earth to do everything that you do, whether it be think, yawn, breathe, anything. The energy you got came from the food that came from the plants ultimately. Even if you ate meat, the meat eaters ate the plants, and the plants got the energy from the sun. So I would argue it might not even be a bad thing to, if you don't like every day look up at the sun and think, oh my gosh, how lucky are we? Like, and almost put yourself on the map of the whole universe and think, man, how lucky are we to be on a life-bearing planet? Maybe start doing that every time you brush your teeth. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Just throwing this out there. I'm throwing this out there. But as I say this, looking at something like, because it is really easy too, when looking at relationships that you have with other people, to like think about yourself and how that other person has hurt you along the way. But if you would take a Martian point of view, where then you look at yourself as an onlooker, and you look at the other person as an onlooker, it's easier to be more objective. Because the definition of objective is to view things as objects, where the definition of subjective is to view yourself as like an I, me, or whatever of the story. And it is really easy to think of your own life with you as the subject of the story. Because when you think of everything that happens in your life, it all comes from your point of view. Right? All your memories are from this point of view, first person. So it's easy to look at your own life from the subjective point of view. And when you do, it's easy to think about how this person hurt you, or that person hurt you, or how this person 5 times trying to help them hurt you each time. But if you try to, and some people even say, pretend that you're in a theater, literally a theater like the Scottish Rite, and pretend that you and the other person are up on the theater going at it, and just imagine, you're not trying to side with yourself, you're not trying to side with the other person, you're just trying to look at what's happening. Take an objective point of view. That can be a way to more easily process what's going on. That's literally like a prescribed method of becoming more objective. People who practice NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, that's a recommended thing. Pretend you're an audience member watching the interaction happen. Pretend that your life is on a silver screen on like the movie, and you're watching the movie. How would you respond if maybe you don't even think about you being the person acting out, and then somebody else acting your role out? Like, you know, Denzel Washington or something is Kramer Sneed, and so is whoever. And you can imagine this interaction, right? That would be a way to think. And you could even try. Pick an actor that you don't even like to portray you. Pick an actor that you really like to portray the other person. Think of it that way. Think, how would I respond if this was the situation? To try to just give yourself a chance to see where the other person's coming from. Because the likelihood is that the other person has some good reason to do what they do, else they wouldn't do it. Now, the good reasons that they have may, in your opinion, not be good. Like, they may not be the right reasons. But there is definitely reason for anyone doing anything, else they wouldn't do it. Like, that's just the way we, as human beings, work. When we intend to do something, that gives us the opportunity to do it. In Alice in Wonderland, they say, you can't, if you want to make the impossible possible, the first step is to believe that the impossible is possible. Anything that you want to do, you have to believe that it can be done, or else you won't do it. I mean, if you really believe that it can't be done, you won't do it. You're not going to try to lift this building up on one finger. It can't, like, and I know that's a stupid example, but someone came into my kindergarten class and said, you can do it, you can be anything you want to, you can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it. And yeah, lies, right? I was like, I'm gonna believe I can put my house on my finger, and I know darn well I can't do it, right? So I remember sitting as a kindergartner, like, this person's lying to me, like, with that statement. But there is truth to it in the sense that anything that anybody does, they have to believe that something good is going to come from it, or else they're not going to do it. They have to believe that there's something that's going to result from it that they like, or else they wouldn't do it. That's just the way that we as human beings operate. So, and it may be, Kramer, that the other person is indeed selfish, and is indeed only focused on them, and as a result, all they care about is just not having people nag them. And they don't even, and the irony of that point of view, I'm just imagining somebody who's on the verge of getting pregnant, or who's a drug abuser or something, and you're going to them, trying to help them, and they're so focused on themselves that they don't want anyone around them questioning what it is that they do. And at the same time, for those people who are that selfish, it's amazing that while selfish in terms of the focus of who they put around them, they're not selfish in terms of looking out for the best in them. Because if you were really acting selfishly and looking out for the best in you, you wouldn't be abusing drugs and you wouldn't be getting pregnant as a teenager. That's all there is to it.
Words of wisdom.
So, it's funny how that works, and I'll go back to Dr. Phil again there, because there was someone on there with a narcissist complex, and it was his advice to the person with the narcissist complex was to be altruistically selfish for yourself. Like you have to say, like, this is my body, this is what I'm carrying through my life until my expiration date comes at some point. I want to try to make that life as best as possible. And yeah, just sitting on the bed, you know, floating on a cloud of heroin or something, bad idea. Bad idea. Because what are you really helping there? I mean, yeah, and yeah, you're spending money to lay down and do nothing.
30 minutes of fun.
I mean, yeah, it's almost, it's ridiculous. And even whenever you think about the fun that it is, like, what does that even mean?
It's just an escape from reality instead of actually facing your problems head on, so you have something else that's like a coping mechanism. But most people don't think that there's coping mechanisms that affect you negatively also. Like people who like to do drinking as like a way like...
Kramer's got this figured out, you can see this. There are, especially with alcoholism, because it tends to make someone slightly coherent, at least for a time, and if not conscious for a long time. I mean, you can see when a point is reached, and this is for somebody who is drinking to avoid real situations that have happened to them, to avoid reality. Is you can drink to do that, because, I mean, when alcohol is flowing through your system, it can cause you to not look at the world crystal clearly. And you also reach the point, and you can see it, where somebody then, it is unavoidable because of the alcohol that's in their system to not face those problems. And then they do, well under the influence of alcohol, and it comes out difficultly. It comes out with incredibly, like, tearful emotional dialogue. It comes out with incredibly rageful, like, belligerence. It comes out with insensitivity, and or some way that it comes out in not a really healthy expression.
Cause I have a friend, I have a couple friends who actually, like, not even like with drugs or anything, but like they did it with like people also. Like they're so like, they need someone constantly like in their life. Like I have my friend Steve, he constantly needs a girlfriend in his life. Mm. Like he's go from like relationship to relationship. Like that dude's dated like 30 girls in like 1 year. Like he constantly needs someone in his life that's a girl, and it's like, you have friends, like what? And he has all these friends, like people that care about him and like do all this stuff for him, but just because there's a girl in his life, he automatically just blows them away and just cares about that one girl. And it's not even like a long girlfriend, it's like 2 weeks and then it's gone.
Now let me try to explain that, because this relates to, I said there are two ways to approach situations when you're kind of throwing your hands up in the air. One is be a Martian. Forget everything that you knew about the situation and look at it from a new point of view. Two is to learn more. Because knowledge is power. Knowledge tools you. It gives you tools to solve situations. Math gives you tools to solve situations that involve numbers. Understanding psychology gives you opportunities to affect someone who themselves is hurting. Understanding sociology allows you to help people who are surrounding themselves in unhealthy relationships. One of the theories that I've encountered says there's 3 levels of development: dependence, independence, and interdependence. I'm suspecting that this friend of yours is dependent. Yes, because you said he has to have a girlfriend.
Like, it's pretty ridiculous.
He must, for some reason, and I don't know why, but he must for some reason, and I bet whenever he's with these girls, I bet he does whatever they tell him to do. That's my suspicion, because I bet he takes the dependent role, and they take the supervisor role, and there's almost like a boss-employee relationship. There's like a parent-child relationship there, in a sense. Because as a kid, you're dependent. That's just where everybody starts. Like, I mean, you can't get food on your own when you're just born. You can't, like, well, I guess you can poop on your own, but nobody's going to clean it up. Like, you're not going to clean up on your own. You don't wipe your own bottom until you're probably 3 or 4 years old, or maybe, I guess, probably earlier than that. But, yeah, probably earlier than that. Yeah, you're probably going to be like 1 or 2 when you're starting to wipe your bottom. But even then, like, to think it takes 2 years just to get to the point where you wipe your bottom, like, wow, that's pretty dependent. My suspicion is he hasn't authorized himself. He hasn't permitted himself, maybe that's a better word. He hasn't permitted himself to be independent. Because, like I said, there always has to be good reason for you to do anything, and he hasn't had good reason to be his own person yet. And I don't know why the reason is, but I would suspect, if now I'm playing. This is all speculative, but I would suspect that there is either a relationship with a woman in his life, like someone in his family, that has been transformatively awesome, or transformatively not awesome. If it was transformatively awesome, say he had a wonderful relationship with his mother or his grandma, then he always wants to have someone who's his superior female looking over him. Possibility. 2, not awesome relationship. He's trying to find that awesome relationship because he has never had an awesome relationship with a woman, and he's trying to find that. I suspect it's probably one of those 2 cases.
First one?
The first one?
Yep.
So
him and his mom get along so well. It's ridiculous. Like, they don't fight ever.
And I would bet that his mom has done a really good job of catering to the needs of the kid and to not ruffling the feathers of the kid. And the fact of the matter is, if you're going to step up to independence, you're going to have to ruffle feathers, because there are going to be things that you fall on, like that you have an opinion on, that somebody else is going to differ on, and you're going to have to stand up for that opinion, or else not really exert your independence.
Well, because I told him he's like going away for college, and I was like, dude, you make it attractive, because you can't be dependent on people when you're in college, like you're on your own.
I will say this, you can be dependent your entire life. I'm telling you this like from I don't know if I want to call it first-hand experience, but I want to at least call it like very, very close family and relative experience. You can be dependent your whole life. It is though limiting, in my opinion, and it leads you to exhibit childlike behavior your entire life. Watch Jerry Springer, watch the Wilco Show, watch these watch Ricky Lake, or watch, I guess Ricky Lake's a poor example, Maury Povich is the one I'm thinking of. You will see 50-year-olds act like children. You will see it. I believe, this is my personal opinion, I believe that when somebody's a 50-year-old acting like a child, and it is obvious from how they are acting, that's a sign that they haven't stepped beyond a dependent platform. There are other theories out there that teach you how to step from dependence to independence to interdependence. And this one theory in particular I can just give you some insight to. The first stage is you do things because you fear punishment, or you do things because they feel good. Those 2 reasons. Like, you don't do things because you fear punishment, you do things because they feel good. That's stage 1. That's being dependent. You're dependent upon the rules that are imposed on you by other people. You're dependent upon the feelings that are evoked from inside you. 2, you do things because the people that you ally with do those things, or you do those things, or you do things because they bring law and order to your own life. Like, you can choose not to ever bring up something to your mom in a fight, or even not in a fight, because you know darn well it's going to ruffle her feathers, even if you know you're right. Literally. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said I don't do this all the time. Like, there are some sticking points with my mother I know she's wrong on. She doesn't know she's wrong on. They're just she's out of line. But I can't bring that up to her, because if I do, all I'm gonna do is pick a fight. I don't wanna pick a fight, so I choose not to bring those things up. That would be for like law and order, and also for the allegiances that you make. Then the last step is doing things because there's good reason for your position. When I say there's good reason for your position, it's not because mom or dad said so, it's not because this friend or that friend said so, it's not because even the law says so. Because we all know there are laws out there that are silly. Things go to the Supreme Court every day for that reason, every day. So when you come to that last stage, that stage of interdependence, that's whenever you really have your voice rooted in all, like, you may have heard something on the news, you may have heard something on the internet, you may have got something from Dr. Phil, you may have got something from this person or that person, and you put it all together and you develop like a code through which to operate in your life. When you get to that point, that's whenever you have really stepped into the phase of interdependence, because you now are not living for, I mean, you're living for yourself and all those things, but really the way in which you judge things is based on this code of principles that is, in your opinion, just rock solid because of all of the good reason that you have for it. And you know darn well, if anybody challenges your opinion, you're never going to get to the point where it's like, oh, because so-and-so said so, or because this or that, because there's always a better reason underneath. And you know that you will just get to a point where you exhaust all your reasons, the other person didn't listen to them, and they're being unreasonable. That's what happens. I mean, if you have legitimately good reasons, and the other person
have sources that can back you up, and like they're from good sources, but then I'm just like,
and the other person doesn't come along, then they're being unreasonable. There was a quote on the side of the board, or the side of the room in the school building that we used to be in. Steven Weinberg said, all logical arguments can be refuted by someone choosing to not listen to the logic. Like, if you don't listen to the logic, you can take everything in that class and say, oh, it's, you know, government conspiracy. Really? Really? If you wanted to. I mean, you could just, oh, this logic thing, it's government conspiracy. Okay, fine.
We'll see how long you get.
Like, if somebody says that, you even heard it in my voice, like, fine, you can do that, and you do your thing there, I'll do my thing here. Like, that would be a point where I would separate from them. But I think because you know it too whenever it gets in a fight, and you're going back and forth, and you say, well, it's because I feel that's true, or whatever, and it's like, that never, like, that does not work. That does not help your case. That's a bully tactic. That's basically what it is. When you're like, because I said so, like that it's a bully tactic.
It goes from logical argument to bully.
If you look at the three stages, it goes from, because they're
interdependence.
Interdependence back to, if not independence, possibly forcing dependence. I know that parents do this occasionally, but sometimes parents will exert their independence when they're out of reasons, and you may even have better reasons, and they'll say, because I said so. And you know what, until you're 18 years old, you don't have a choice. And even after you're 18 years old, if you want a good relationship with your parents, you still may not have a choice. You may have to check that at the door. I would argue that everybody should want to have a healthy relationship with your parents, because if you don't, your earliest memories are with your parents. And you have deeply rooted, incredibly meaningful memories from early in your life relating to your parents. And if you're not healthily relating to your parents, you are going to be terrorized mentally by the thoughts of your childhood. I'm just telling you that's what's going to happen. I'm now basing this on a show there's a show about, on A&E about people who are in prison. And the warden was speaking and saying, the number of people who are in prison who have poor relationships with their mothers is really high compared to the regular population. When you start to break away from that relationship with your parents, I think all of those old thoughts are going to come and sort of haunt you. They will. So I think there's a really good position to be in, to say, you know what, even if I disagree with this person, even if I know that they're not going to listen to the reason on these sticking points that I know are reasonable, I'm going to accept the fact that my mom is unreasonable in this way, and my dad is unreasonable in this way. I may try to help them as best as I can, but ultimately I'm just accepting the fact that they're my parents, I want to have a good relationship with them, and I don't want to let petty indifferences get in the way, because ultimately, with my parents in particular, it's petty indifferences, if it ever is something that gets in the way. And but not denying the fact there couldn't be legitimate indifferences, where you say, you know what, being around this person is not only unhealthy, but toxic. And it not only brings me down while I'm around them, but it brings me down for weeks afterwards. And that's whenever you have to say, you know what, it's probably best to just cleanse your mind of that person as best as you possibly can.